Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Voices of Africa on Chat Night. The Berlin Conference in 1884 saw the partition of Africa. And by 1914, the continent had fully become the property of European powers. Africa's resources were pillaged and its peoples exploited with its attendant nefarious consequences. The question today is Africa's economic stagnation and political turbulence still attributable to colonization? Texas-based global affairs analyst Ejike Okpa has answers that could jolt you. I cannot find a single African who does not slam European imperialism yet. In many ways, we have continued to embrace some vestiges of colonization. What would it take to wean us off? Ladies and gentlemen, join me now in welcoming the global affairs analyst, Texas-based Ejike Okpa on the platform. Mr. Okpa, thank you for accepting my invitation to come to take a hot seat on Chat Night Africa's Voices of Africa.
Well, your invitation doesn't come like buy one, get three free. So when he showed up, I have to cancel everything to be on your show because I know you like to set the wilderness on fire. And then, I don't know who tries to put it out.
Let me thank those watching the broadcast now. If you have chosen to watch Voices of Africa in spite of the many things you have to do this evening, it is because you have made the conscious decision to watch a vivacious discussion. Ed Okpa often says he doesn't write love letters. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, we know what love letters is. Sometimes, you write love letters to appease somebody, even when you don't, agree with what they're doing. Based on what we face as a people that are, Black, whether we're in America, the Caribbean, or incontinent, our issues are very strong. You talked about the partitioning on Africa, and then, more than 108 years since that happened. Where are we? Are we still looking back and blaming some people who came? It sometimes talks me when I look at the World War, the First World War. While European countries haven't even gotten their own households in order, they were partitioning in Africa. They divided us, and then they had some Africans to go fight for them. And then once the war is ended, they don't even recognize that Africans participated in fighting in the war. How many medals have been given to Africans for their bravery and their sacrifice? So here it is somebody who came in and took over your household, but they haven't gotten their own household in order. I mean, that should be something that every African, like Bob Marley say, if you are Jamaican or whomever, you are an African. Why are we such a people that anybody feels that they can come in there and colonize us and enslave us? And then years after they have left, we are still suffering from whatever it is they did.
So, Ed Okpa, you have said time and again that Africans are crying too much about colonization. You believe that African scholars are those perpetuating this unending lamentation. Why do you think this way? You're trying to make light something that's so serious.
Well, I mean, look, I'm not making light of what is so serious, but I'm just saying, how much longer do we need to cry about this colonization and slavery? Well, I mean, what time do we need? What will make a Black person whole? I mean, are we looking for apology? Who are we looking for their apology from? Or are we looking for money? How much money do we think that if we're given, we're going to say, okay, fine, you have addressed my concerns, and now I'm going to move forward, and I'm not going to blame you anymore. Well, we haven't answered that question. So instead, we have used the issues of slavery and colonization to always make an excuse. The current African leaders since independence, tell me what African countries since independence has gotten it together. Most African presidents, when they get sick, where do they go? They go back to a hospital in the country of their former colonial masters to get treatment. And meanwhile, you have African doctors, you have the ability as the president to build that facility in your country and stay there, but instead they don't do it. So I'm just saying what, and then just take the same thing to African Americans in America. Have you been to black neighborhoods? What is going on there? It's always the white man, what the white man has done or hasn't done, how white man is restricting us. And then we have also gotten the same education, if not even better education than most of these white people or Europeans or Asians that we blame for holding us back. I'm just saying, at what point do we unshackle ourselves from this mental stuff? Because the chains are already gone, but we are still victimizing ourselves, based on an imaginary thing. So that's what I say. I don't make light of it, but I just think that we need to get away from it.
At Okpa, how, in your view, did colonization impact Africa besides the fact that the continent's resources were piped away?
Well, the continent resources were not piped away. If you look at by the time they left us independent, how many African countries were producing oil? Okay, how many African countries were producing gold? I mean, the same thing that we think that they took away, we still have in abundance, but we haven't developed the domestic resources in order to produce those things for us, not to sell to them, but to even sell to ourselves. How many African countries have healthy trading agreement with each other? Just in 1 or 2 years ago, they're talking about this inter-African continental trade. Why did it have to take us this long to do what everybody else has been doing? Have you read about the Lome Convention, which was done in the 70s, that just said that Africans don't have to produce or add value to whatever raw material they have to ship it out. Do we have to subscribe to that? We hear about, France, the guy in Paris, his name is Macron or whatever, and he's still going around French-speaking African countries and try to make them to do what he wants them to do. And then we sort of give excuse, oh, well, if we don't do it, he's going to overthrow us. At what point do we tell the man, so go to hell, excuse my French, go to hell, we're not going to do it. I read that, the guy in Ivory Coast is better off talking to the guy in Ghana than the guy in Cameroon is better off talking to the guy in Nigeria. Instead, when things happen, the guy in Nigeria is going to London to go seek advice, and the guy in Cameroon is going to what? Paris to go seek. You're still talking to a white man. Okay, excuse me, I have to say it the way I'm saying it. You're still talking to a white man who, by their own nature, maybe think you are less than. At what point do we say we don't need your advice? You have issues in your own country. What are you coming to tell us to do here?
Have you identified any ways in which colonization impacted Africans negatively?
No, it has not. Look, remember, America was colonized. Okay? And if you go to, literally Japan one time colonized China. The word colonization is not an African word. It is some foreign word. So they've been doing it to themselves. What has happened in the case of the black person or the African, wherever he or she is they haven't learned how to stop crying and said, you know what, you did it to us. Now we're not gonna let you do it. Instead, they are still behaving as if they need permission from these people in order for them to give food to their own people. That's what kind of irritates me.
If you listen to conversations among Africans, even African scholars here in the United States, in Europe, and overseas, they continue to blame the West, and they're blaming the West continuously because the problem is continuous.
No. Okay, who is the scholar? Forget that because somebody sat in a classroom for as many years as they did and they get a paper, that doesn't mean that they are intelligent. You look at a lot of people that have done things in the world, they don't have PhD. They didn't do it from the classroom of a university. They did it by dealing with the people and challenging forces that are negative to their own people. So all these African scholars and whatever they call them, I don't give a damn about them. What I'm saying is that the African president who takes money from his people and go put it in a foreign bank, what are they thinking? Is there any white man holding a gun to their head and say, you do it? Today, whether it's true or not, but the number is out there. They said, billions of dollars of African money are sitting in European banks. We know the case of Mobutu of DRC. And when he died, he had so much money, they say he's left in Swiss bank. I mean, so you're doing this thing, you blaming somebody for keeping you down, but at the same time, you're stealing from your own people and taking the money to them. I mean, we have corruption in America. We have corruption everywhere in the world. But you're not going to see an American president or a public official taking money and putting it in the Mexico account or some Swiss account. You may have individuals do that, but not the public figure. The case of Africa is the African president, is the African government officials. Every little money they get from their people, or even when they negotiate deals for this mining rights or timber rights or whatever it is the foreigners want in Africa, they are willing to say, hey, leave some for me over there, because they don't even have confidence in their own country. They don't do anything to strengthen the economy of their own country. Instead, they are willing, if this thing collapses, because they always have in their mind it's going to collapse, they can run to Paris or Germany or England or anywhere else to go live. How many former African government officials live outside of Africa? We can name them. Name any country.
And these African officials, people in African leadership, are people who studied in some of the best universities in Europe and Africa. You talk about Cambridge in London, Oxford, you're talking about MIT, you're talking about Harvard in the United States, Berkeley. What is born in France? When they go back to Africa, what is happening? Why do they just transform? They were here overseas, exposed to democratic culture, exposed to a culture of accountability. What happens when they go back home? If you went back home, I worry you behaved the same.
Well, no, I wouldn't, because I was already educated before I came here. I didn't come to America to come learn ABCD. I was already college educated. And you're talking about going to nice schools. You couldn't get better than Harvard. Okay, I went to Harvard, and then so what? At the end of the day, the education that I got, is it helping me to transform? Is it helping me to impact people purposefully and positively, or is it just for show? A lot of these African people are interested in the title, I'm a professor, I'm a doctor. Have you ever seen their names? Their letters before and their letters after. And they're still running like subservient people to people that they probably had better education than in these other universities they attended. So the thing is, this is a black thing. I mean, remember, if you go back to Harvard, there have been some black people that graduated in Harvard in 18 something, and then what do they do with it? What have they done with it? Once that paper is handed to you, what do you do with it? Instead, a lot of these Africans are start chasing jobs in World Bank, in United Nations, IMF, WTO. I mean, don't we have an African woman? What is her name? Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala at WTO. She was Nigerian finance minister. She worked at the World Bank. You would have thought, for somebody like that, why are you going abroad again? Why don't you sit in Nigeria, have a consulting services, and advise Nigeria's subsequent government on how to do things? Instead, she has to run out to go get a job. And then when they go to these world agencies, Africans are jumping up and down. Oh my God, an African is Secretary General of UN. Hey, we have had 2 Africans that do that. Boutros Ghali of Egypt and Kofi Annan. What is going on in Ghana? Because Kofi Annan was a Ghanaian, was Secretary of State. How much trade is Nigeria doing? Because Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala is a world, whatever, the head of the World Trade Organization. How much health benefit is Ethiopia getting because an Ethiopian is over there at world head? So the white people, again, the Western people have learned how to confuse Africans by giving them this glorious title. At the end of the day, nothing is going back home except for them to be doing the bidding for their masters. Okay, well, let's put a black person in there, because black people are very good at celebrating job titles, but they are not creating those jobs. Okay, you look at it everywhere. We have a bunch of us in America who are working for many corporations because we love the title. We love to be in the comfort zone of something somebody has built, instead of us going to go build our own.
We will come to that. And I said from the start, if you've never met a controversial African, or should I call you Nigerian American, sir?
Well, I'm an American by choice, even though I was born in Nigeria. So
all right. If you never met a controversial guy, then you are about to meet one. If you're not already meeting one, my name is Divine Chamakong. I'm hosting this broadcast from Washington, D.C. metropolitan area.
We love Chat Night Africa. Keep watching Chat Night Africa.
If you win, if you have any of these answers right, you have a cash prize. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ejike Okpa, for providing the questions and the prizes. You can dial the number 240-603-7367. You've got to have all questions right. Question number 1. Where in West Africa is the oldest European building/mansion located? Let me repeat that. Where in West Africa is the oldest European building/mansion located? Question number 2. What West African country was home to the oldest Western-style college and formal court? Let me repeat that. What West African country was home to the oldest Western-style college and formal court? Now let's get on with the program. Ed Okpa, you must have heard about a pact allegedly signed by former French colonies and France. Have you heard about that?
Well, I've heard something about it, but I have never really seen a document to attest to whether, to each authenticity.
Okay, very good. And I do. That's why I say alleged. It is alleged that one of the clauses of the pact says in case there's some turbulence in Africa, former French colony, well, the heads of state can invite French troops to come in. Another one I hear, African former French colonies have got to deposit a certain portion of their reserves in the French central bank. Ed, this is granting you independence. It's like you say, you let go the dog and you're holding the leash. How can you just dismiss this?
But again,
if it's true.
I mean, again, let me give you a simple analogy that may even be more personal to any one of us. It's like you walked away from a divorce and it wasn't working. But at the same time, you call in your ex and say, honey, can I come over? Honey, I miss you. Honey, blah, blah, blah. When you start doing that, then what does it tell your ex? That you haven't recovered from whatever it is that caused you guys to separate, but now you're begging to come back. And that happens to be the case with Black people. We don't know how to walk away from a relationship and say, you know what, you abused me one time, you're not going to do it. And now we have the benefit of having attended, like you said, attended the universities. These people that are controlling us or trying to control us have attended. We have sat in the same classroom as they have. We've taken the test they have taken. Oftentimes we even scored better, but we still have this mental struggle that has kept us, shackled to where we think if a white man shows up in Africa, all of a sudden Jesus has arrived and we're going to have to do what it is they are doing. I'm just saying, if there is this thing that France is demanding that every African nation, their French-speaking part of it, is going to live. Let's ask the central bank governor or finance minister of that country. Please, when was the last time you sent money to France? And how much? And why? Is that a difficult question to ask? And what is the document enabling you? You don't even have to wait for the government. Then the so-called elite in that country, you can file a lawsuit and say, we want this thing to stop. You can even take a case to the International Court of Justice at The Hague and tell France, come and justify why we need to keep paying you. But nobody has done it. We just have this rumor floating around. France is doing it. And I'm looking at Macron. Macron is probably as young as the grandchild of some of these African presidents. And then you can't even stand up to him and say, hey, I'm not going to do that. Who the heck are you? We can have our own soldiers. We don't need you to defend us. That's the sort of conversation that I'm waiting for some African president who may have balls. They have balls, they just don't recognize it. Just said to France. There was a book written by a former Secretary of State under Clinton, Warren Christopher. He says chances of a lifetime. And in that book, he had mentioned something about France should hands off their grip on their former colonies in Africa. Okay, he said it. But are Africans responding? Well, we're not responding. We're probably waiting for France to say, okay, I'm going to let you go. Or the war to come, fight for us. Well, that's one thing about Black race that I just don't understand. We are always waiting for somebody to come and fight for us. And when they do it at their own time and for a price that we oftentimes keep paying and we don't know we are paying it. You have to pick up and fight. If somebody comes into your home and try to destroy it, don't lay back there. Just put up a fight. because maybe next time they're not going to show up. But if you just let them come in, guess what? They're going to be coming all the time. So
why do you think, Ed, that these African leaders cannot stand up to their former colonial masters?
Because because the people in Africa are worshiping their leaders. They don't want to say anything. I mean, we have since Cameroon got independence, they've only had two leaders.
Oh, by the way, the 6th of November will make Mr. Biya 40 years in power.
Yes, but I'm just saying, Cameroon has had two people, Ahijo and Biya. And then everybody goes to Biya and worship him. And, whatever he says, if he sneezes, the entire country, he can wake up one day and say, nobody should be on the street. And everybody's on, in their bedroom. So we are afraid of people that look like us. Then we blame it on the white people. Africans are afraid of their leaders. And because they are not engaging them. And then the people that surround these leaders are puppets. They are beggars. I don't care how much PhD they have. They can't even hold a counter argument to some of these people that they serve. They can't. How many Africans are bold enough to tell the president, Mr. President, with all due respect, this policy is not going to work? Instead, they keep quiet because they want their mansion. They don't want to offend. I think part of the African culture that offends me is this comfort thing. Oh, don't speak up to your dad. He's your dad. Don't speak up to your older sister, your senior. We don't even call it older. We say your senior brother, because for Africa everything is about rank. So we do that. And then when we do that, what else do? We look for the next person we're going to oppress, because we can't even oppress the person that is oppressing us. We look for the next thing. That's how the whole culture, the whole continent is all about abuse. And that abuse is mainly 99.9% coming from Africans. I don't want to give the white people the credit that they are the one holding Africa, because all it does for them is to enlarge their ego. I have lived with them. I live in Dallas. I have run for office. I have served in commissions with them. I have gone to school with them. I'm waiting for that white man who can intimidate me intelligently or academically. But that's not my competition. My thing is, what can Africans do in order for them to begin to attract the sort of respect that they are entitled to? They don't have to beg anybody for it. That's what I'm saying. You put up that white man who you think can come and intimidate me, and let's go do show and tell. They are not there. They are not out there to intimidate anybody. Instead, they are out there to see who they can work with. But Africans think that until a white man shows up in what they are doing, they're not going to be able to do anything.
Okay, but that is I would think that these are some of the vestiges of colonialism.
Well, I mean, whatever it is, you can wean yourself from it. You can say, heck no, that's not going to work. I say, oh, now I have woken up to what the game plan is. I'm not going to let you guys do it anymore. Look, when I finished high school in Nigeria, people were leaving for America. My father said, don't go to America. Get yourself understood, understand the country of your birth, and then America is not running. So when you get there, you will know what it is you want. And you know what? That's the best my father ever. I mean, one of the best things my father ever told. Because when I came to this country, I knew what I wanted. And I set my thing in times. If I don't do certain things by a certain time, I was going back to Nigeria. And I kept surprising myself, because those things keep happening. I have interacted, name it. I've met presidents, I've met governors, I've hosted them, and I've asked them questions. I'm yet to find any one of them whose sense of experience or intelligence is going to come and intimidate me to where I'm like, oh my God, I have never thought of that. But so what I'm saying is that I am glad that I live in this country, and I appreciate what America has done for me and what I have done for America, because it's a two-way traffic. But I just get offended when I see African presidents, they run to UN and they stand there for 15 minutes and make some of these lousy speeches, and they go home. But they don't even go home to speak with their people. How many African presidents are hosting or holding town hall meetings with their people? Every little invitation they get, they jump in the plane. Why don't you send your foreign minister? Why don't you have the ambassador of your country in that country say, hey, go over there and represent me. I'm not coming. I am busy dealing with domestic issues. Instead, no, they are the ones that are going to jump in the plane. If Moscow invites them, they go. If Washington DC invites them, they go. If even India of all places, they will go. Pakistan, Lebanon, they will go. At what point do you say, I'm not going? What are you telling me? My father told me even before I got any degree that 1 + 1 is 2 anywhere in the world. The difference is the confidence you have in that knowledge and the ability to express it before anybody. Africans can pile up on all the degrees and certificates. Oftentimes they don't have the confidence and the attitude to let them know, I know it, and this is why I know it. And that's why everybody takes advantage of Africans.
You are watching Voices of Africa, and my guest today is Texas-based global affairs analyst, Mr. Ejike Okpa. We have these questions, fun questions, and if you have all the answers right, we have a nice cash package for you. Where in West Africa is the oldest European building / mansion located? Let me repeat it. Where in Africa is the oldest European building / mansion located? Question number 2. What West African country was home to the oldest Western-style college and formal education? My name is Divine Chamakong. I'm anchoring this broadcast from Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. The phone line is now open. If you want to challenge Mr. Ed Okpa, he says he doesn't run away from a fight. If you want to challenge him, dial the number 240-603-7367. 240-603-7367, and you will be live on the show. The entire planet Earth will hear you. I have a letter from Cameroon from one of the most vocal senior Reverend fathers, Mr. Reverend Father Tatambui. I will be reading his contribution in a moment. But before I get there, I also want to inform you that this show is being broadcast on LinkedIn. It's also on the internet, www.chatnightafrica.net. It's also on a broadcast YouTube channel called Chat Night Africa. You can also find it on my timeline, and it's also on our broadcast website, on our broadcast page on Facebook, followed by thousands and thousands across Africa and the world. I appreciate you putting all aside everything you had to do to watch this vivacious conversation with Mr. Ed Okpa, a Texas-based global affairs analyst. Do you realize you're not mainstream in your thinking?
Well, I mean, I hope it's a compliment. Yes, because you know what? I came from a political family. My grandfather, my father. I mean, I have witnessed politics and see the difference between politics and public service. Back in 1955, my father was chief. Now, my father wasn't even chief at the time because he became chief in 1960. But at the time, he was the counselor for works for the division at the time, when I was born in. He represented them. So the Irish missionaries came and they wanted to build a teachers training college in his village. You know what my father told them? He said, you don't build for us, you build with us. Because if the Irish missionaries had succeeded in doing that, they would have named it St. something, St. Francis and whatever. And I've always wondered, how come I cannot have St. Ejike? How can I have an African saint? Why does it have to be an European saint? And then the Africans have been following that stupidity, believing in something that somebody has told them. So my father challenged them. I said, no, and they walked away. And then my father rallied his village people and they built that teachers' college. 1955, and my dad was 27 years old. And it became the only college in the then Eastern Nigeria that was not named after a saint. Because every other one was the St. Charles, St. Teresa, and this and this and this. So, I mean, Africans are sitting there, just like you go to Zimbabwe and Zambia, the fall you have over there. What is it called? Victoria Falls. Excuse me, who is Victoria? Wasn't the fall there before somebody came up and said, oh, Victoria Falls? How many natural stuff in Europe or in America are named after an African? But Africans are willing to take the names of foreign people and put on natural, natural features that God gave them, and they name it after a foreigner. Come on.
Would you say these are some of the hangovers of colonization? Would you say these are some of the hangovers of colonization?
Well, yes, it could be, but at the same time, you could say, no, I mean, hangover. I like the word or phrase you are using, hangover, because you got to wake up from a hangover. You know, what I mean, when we have too much to drink, we wake up and it's I'm out of that. When you wake up at the hangover, do you say hangover or do you say I'm not going to do it? I am just I want to see African countries that are bold enough to tell the visiting foreigners, every relationship has to be, beneficial to the both parties. You don't have to submit to one and get subdued. I mean, look at China now. Excuse me, China? Who is the Chinese man or woman that will go to Africa and do the things they do? Try go doing that in China and see how they'll skin you alive. How many Africans have gotten major contracts in China, in India, in Pakistan, in Lebanon? But these are the people that are running shows in Africa. I'm not making a racial, ethnic statement here. I'm just saying what is good for the gander. If what is good for the goose is good for the gander. Why is it an Indian, a Pakistani, a Lebanese, and Korean, anybody else will show up in Africa with a briefcase, and when they're going home with a truckload? Why you go to their own country and they don't even think you exist?
Well, but yeah, you say why? But our African engineers with PhD from MIT, from UC Berkeley, from Harvard, and so on, PhD in accounting, when they go home, they want to be members of government, where they wear the agbada, and sit behind the office, big mahogany desk. They want to be put on high tables at social functions. They don't want to roll up their sleeves and get into the trenches to do what they were taught in universities here in the West to do. Because that's the problem.
Because again, we are chasing these people because of the title of where they went to school and the certificates before. I mean, they have to show. I don't deal with any human being based on their educational level. I have to deal with them on their character and their strength of character. Are they able to stand up even when something is right? I said, this is right thing. Or are they going to be timid enough, in order for them to just, go along to get along? Divine, there's a PhD, which is the passion and hard work and dedication that nations need in order for them to build themselves up. And then there's the PhD that Africans chase without having the passion and the hard work, attitude, and dedication to get anything happen. If having a PhD is what a nation needs, Nigeria would have been ahead. Have you ever met a Nigerian who's not a doctor or a chief? Have you? You go to parties, like you said, they all want to be recognized, even though it's a crappy subject they have, and they can't even stand up to a white man and say, no, you can't do this. But they want to have something with their own people, and then sometimes they go to these parties and they look like peacock. I mean, you see the colors and how they look at, and they do this with themselves. But even the country you have put in decades, you don't even know how the country functions. So who are you fooling? Who are you trying to impress? Other countries that built themselves, they didn't do it that way. They were able to go in and internally restructure themselves, and they give themselves some level of protection in order for them to get some things right. You know how many years it took for an American president to leave America after independence? 106 years. And where did he go? He went to Panama. Okay, but as soon as an African president gets into office, what are they going? They're going all over the world. Looking for who?
Well, the head of state of Cameroon, Mr. Biya, went to Elysee, and I think it was Mitterrand at the time, and said publicly, and a lot of Cameroonians were embarrassed, that he is the best pupil of the French president. It's best student of what?
But I'm saying he said it, and then he comes home, and why don't we say, Mr. President, you use some of the most derogatory statements to describe him, but sometimes we keep quiet. I'm just saying it.
And before Mr. Macron, recently, before he arrived in Yaoundé at midnight, I think it was even after midnight, there were crowds and crowds of people
at the airport.
Singing and beating drums and so on. I don't know.
But the thing is, for Biya, we have to go to Paris. Is there anybody at the airport for him?
Sometimes the French president don't even show up. The presidents of the West don't even show up at the airport.
But I'm just saying, you're doing these things for people, I remember my day when I used to live in Nigeria. If any foreign dignitary is coming, that was the time the streets of Lagos are clean. Lagos is a filthy, dirty place. Okay, but anytime some foreign dignitary is coming, oh my God, the government to devote resources to clean the street and have children. The school day is closed so that these kids are lined up to wave flag. And I was like, that is the most stupid thing anybody can do. If I were to be president of any African country, I will not be waiting for any foreign dignitary to come. The best I can do for you, you land at the airport, you will get security, and your motorcade comes to the presidential palace. But no kids should be lining up with the street to wave flag for you, whether the queen or the king or the president of America or France. Africans should stop doing these things because they don't do it for you. I can understand if they're doing it for you.
Ed Okpa, if you came to my home and I look forward to signing some loans for me, I think I should cook the best chicken and keep for you.
No. Because
are we doing this because of the loans that some of the favors we get from these Western leaders? And nothing against them. We're just saying it should be reciprocal. It should be reciprocal.
They need Africans to take the loans. Loan is actually a liability, and you have to pay it back. So why are you celebrating? I mean, you should celebrate after you paid off the loan. And if the loan has enabled you to gain some positive traction. But if just giving you a loan that is choking you, then at the point you can even say, hey, I want to reconsider the terms of this loan, or I'm going to walk away from the loan. Africans don't do it. They just keep paying it, or they keep going back and keep begging. Oh, please, give me more time, and they take the unpaid principal interest and put it on the principal, and the money keep piling. No, even in America, don't we have companies when they are overstretched? They can file for a reorganization, or they can file for bankruptcy. So why don't African countries say, hey, I'm filing for reorganization, give me time? Instead, you are constantly going there and begging. I mean, you are entitled to your own currency. So we don't have a global currency. Even though the dollar is the dominant currency in the world, it's still not the global currency. Every country is entitled to have theirs. You should not allow your domestic currency to be devalued. You can print it. In America, we print money. God does not wire money to America to say, now give to everybody else. If anybody says that, I want to see when God wired that money. The dollar is printed.
Ed Okpa, I am not a diplomat, but imagine if I were a Western leader and you received me in your home country in Africa with that pomp and pageantry. If I became an official of the World Bank, or if I had some connections with the World Bank, perhaps chances are that you're going to get some loans under good conditions. No. I know you are not a fan of those Bretton Woods institutions.
You live in Washington, D.C. What is the lending capacity of the World Bank? It's not even $80 billion a year. Okay, Bank of America alone makes $1 billion loan every year. So what is the World Bank? Why is Africa still caught up with the World Bank? It's not even a bank in the sense of a bank. It's not a deposit bank. You can't buy shares in it. They just go outside and mope money the wherever they can mope it, and then they lend it to Africa, based on a spread that they want to make, and then pay back the money. Why do we have to do that? We now have banks. We're able to have people who have understood and studied the system of money. Why are you going to the World Bank? Okay, how many times has America borrowed money from the World Bank? Is America not part of the world? Or England part of the world? So why is the World Bank, specific for Africa? You might as well change the name and call it, the World Bank for Africa or something like that. But the world is all of us. So if only people can borrow from it, that means you are the only ones who have not been able to figure it out. I'm just saying we don't need the World Bank. You don't need it. We don't need to have country directors of World Bank over African countries, forcing them to open their books, and then at the same time you are exposing your weaknesses. Hey, why are you doing that? The Cameroonian money is entitled by sovereign right, is Cameroonian money. If you're going to trade with somebody and they're going to devalue your money, say no. Because trade is a two-way traffic. Is either bilateral or multilateral.
Why do you think that African governments so willingly accept these devaluations of their currencies?
Because they are weak and they don't even understand it. And then sometimes they do it with an idea of some personal benefit. Look, in the 80s, they had a structural adjustment program, SAP. And it sapped Africa. And they were still going back. I mean, now they have, World Bank country direct. In fact, when Jonathan in Nigeria, former president, was in office, and Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, who now sits as the WTO, suggested that there's a World Bank staff that is in the Aso Rock of Nigerian presidents. Excuse me? Why? What does the World Bank staff know that a lot of Africans that have MBA finance don't know? What? And then they always pick people from these, either Indians or South America as, so they say, oh, okay, it's people from developing countries. Excuse me, because you have an MBA doesn't mean you understand the economics.
We will be back. We will be back with Ed Okpa. I told you this guy doesn't write love letters. We'll be back with this conversation. Time for us to have a commercial break. My name is Divine Chamakong. I'm anchoring this broadcast from Washington, D.C. metropolitan area.
Imagine a reserve setting that communicates directly with nature. You are there, Jirais Guest Rooms. It is the ideal place for the best furnished apartments. Whether you are alone, as a couple, or as a family, your stay will be most pleasant in the Jirais Guest Rooms, where comfort and security punctuate your daily life. To facilitate travel for its customers, Jirais Guest Room have provided luxurious vehicles available 24 hours a day. You are passing through Yaoundé, ask for Jirais Guest Room located in the Mbangong Koloso Mbankomo district, 25 minutes from Yaoundé Simaleng International Airport. Reservations 679257925 or 699007685. Jirais Guest Room, more than a pleasure to serve you.
And you are watching Voices of Africa on Chat Night Africa. And I'm anchoring this broadcast from Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. This broadcast is being aired concurrently on our website on the internet, www.chatnightafrica.net. You can also watch it on YouTube. It's going to be there. The channel is Chat Night Africa. Please, when you go there, hit the subscribe button. It's also on our Facebook page. You can search it by simply typing Chat Night Africa. You can also watch this broadcast on LinkedIn. Ladies and gentlemen, once more, join me in welcoming the outspoken global affairs analyst, Texas-based Mr. Ed Okpa for more probing questions on the platform. Ed Okpa.
Thank you for having me.
Ed,
yes.
The next question we'd ask you is, how can Africans or the African continent begin to wean itself out of this excessive Western influence? Now, before you answer that question, here is what Mr. Mavanga Mandangi says. African leaders do not go to Europe only for loans. They go for patronage, for legitimacy. They owe their being in power to their European headmasters and not to their people. You want to react to that?
I mean, I think there's an element of truth in that, because every one of them feels until some white man, again, I have nothing against white people, but we, the black race and the Africans, mainly have, they have latched onto this whiteness, and then if a white person is not authenticating what they are doing or saying approval, they think they are not doing it. I don't think you should do that, because again, you go to some of these countries, they have their own social economic challenges. So everybody's got issues, but when you start to create God out of another human being, what do you think you're going to get? You're going to get that, okay, well, take your time, I'm going to get to you, or if I get to you, this is what's going to cost you. I don't think Africans need to do that, because again, we now have well-educated, well-exposed Africans who can go home if they want to and make their country right, and then deal with the challenges.
Ed Okpa, tell me, well, you have connections in very high places in the United States. I can't think of any U.S. president you have not met, perhaps those who were in power before you were born. When you meet friends in high places in the United States and overseas, you travel to Africa, what are you telling them? Do you tell them this?
No, I do. In fact,
how do they react to you?
Oh no, sometimes they're shocked. When Trump got elected, okay, I'm not going to mention the country I went to. When Trump got elected. I was on a visit in a month, a few months after, in one African country, and I was talking with the finance minister, and sort of I said, hey, yeah, he was relaying the challenges they have, and I sort of kind of broke it down for him, and he was sitting there looking at me, it's like, what kind of African are you? He said, nobody has ever come here and said these things the way you are saying it. And I said, I live there. I have interacted with them. I know how the policies are made. I know what the goals of each policy is. Oftentimes it's intended for some of the policies. Sometimes they work, they abandon it, they sunset it. But for here, we are always panicking. And then he told me that the following week, some people from the World Bank were coming in for audit. I mean, the whole country froze. Their finance minister was panicky. The prime minister, the central bank man, and I was like, world what? In America, the World Bank people don't even testify in Congress about challenges of American economy. But they're going to go to Africa and hold this flag that, hey, I'm here to solve your problem. Excuse my French, get the heck out of here. Go solve the one in Washington, D.C. before you come here. That sometimes international policy demands bluff. Africans don't know how to bluff. They don't know how to stand up and say, no, we're not going to do it. Instead, they keep, taking the same prescription since before independence and after independence that has not produced for them. Electricity, Nigeria built its power plant. Can you tell me when? 1896. 14 years after America built its own first power plant, 1882. So 14 years separates US and Nigeria having electricity. But look at it, more than a century and also more than a quarter of a century. Nigeria that says they are the giant of Africa, they are the most educated and the smartest people. Smart people build their country, they don't run it down. So I don't know if you've ever been to Nigeria, it is a very depressing, physically unannoying country. But electricity that has existed there for 126 years, they can't even produce it. They're still running around the world looking for somebody to lend them money when the science behind generating electricity, transmitting it, and distributing it has not changed. Whether you call it smart green power, electricity has no color. Okay, and you can generate it from anything.
You have been to Nigeria, and I remember, if my recollection is correct.
I was there last year.
Okay. When you went there, did you seek to meet some Nigerian senators to be as blunt to them?
A lot of them I went to school with. Remember, I went to college before I came. I know. In fact, my roommate is a retired brigadier general in Nigeria now.
So when you talk to them, what do they tell you? They just say, "Masa, leave that thing, Oga, leave that thing, go with chop."
Because they are victims of their own limited environment and scope. And one thing you notice with Africans, that whomever put in the Bible, a prophet has no honor in their village. He looked at the Black people to put that in there because everybody else has honor for their own. So if you are knowledgeable Black person, African, you take it on, they hate you for being knowledgeable because in their mind it's like, how come you know it and they don't know it? And that
Singapore started at the same level with a lot of African countries.
Lower. Not even lower.
Even lower. If you look at the UAE, United Arab Emirates, look at Dubai and so on. Why are they where they are and African countries, our beautiful continent, is where it is?
Because of is the people. Remember, it has nothing to do with nature. It has to do with the people. The people are the most important factor in any productive engagement, not the equipment, not the land, not the capital in terms of money, is the people. Because if you leave $1 million on a box in your house and go away for 10 years, that $1 million is not going to do anything. It's going to sit there, except maybe termites can get to it and chew it up. So the human being is the one that makes things either go plus or go minus. Africans have chosen to make themselves minus because they have shown that they are not confident even in the knowledge they have. An African will learn 1 + 1 and he still want to go to school and get a PhD on learning how to say 1 + 1. My father taught me that, again, I said it, if you learn 1 + 1 on the mango tree, it's the same thing if you learn it under an air-conditioned classroom. That's why he was able to stand up to the Irish people and colonial people in my village and say, you can do this. And I saw it as a child. And he told them he cannot come in here and do anything that I have not approved. I need to see them come to my father's house and plead. And my father said, let me think about it. But now, modern day African, we just lay down and let people step on them and trample on them just because they're going to get, I don't even know what it is they're getting. I mean, I met Obasanjo. I've been to his presidential library, and now I asked him a question one time. I said, Mr. President, why are you always going abroad for medical checkup? Your wife died in Spain. Babangida's wife died in LA. Former president of Nigeria, Yaradua, died somewhere. I don't know where it is, and whether in the Middle East. I said, I mean, are you guys not concerned? What is that hospital you see abroad that you so much believe in their own abilities that you can say, I want everything in this hospital built in my country, and I want to see Nigerian doctors or healthcare professionals to come and run it. But they won't do it because it's glorifying for them to say, oh, he's abroad. He's there for medical treatment. And Obasanjo was just looking at me like, wow. I said, Mr. President, why are you doing this? And the African presidents don't know how to instill confidence in their country. When Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala was invited to be Minister of Finance or something for Nigeria the first time, do you know what she did? She said, I want to be paid in dollar, not in naira. You come into a country, you don't even have faith in their currency. You want to be paid in another country. If I were a Nigerian president, I'd say, get back to Washington, D.C. But that's what we do. We compromise. You come in to be finance minister, but you don't have faith or confidence in their currency.
What would it take for Africa and Africans to wean themselves off the vestiges, the remnants of colonialism?
Well, what it would take is that we should stop going to school for any other subject. We should just go to school for confidence building. Okay, before you get your degree in anything, you should graduate in, maybe spend electives, do some electives on how to speak up, how to be confident. That's what Africans don't have. And I don't care how many PhDs, we live in US, we see a bunch of them, and then we go to Africa, we see a bunch of them. They are not confident people. That's why even slavery happened. Like I say, I gave an example during the World War I. African, European countries that were colonizing Africa, they hadn't even gotten their own countries together, but they had Africans to go fight the war that Africans had no reason to be in. And when the war ended, they haven't even given any African a medal for participating or even acknowledged that African soldiers participated. And they still held on to the colonies while their own household was falling apart. I mean, it's like somebody coming to give you advice on how to hold your marriage together, but in their own household, they're having issues with their own spouse. Come on. Does it make sense? Well, don't you want somebody who got it together to come give you a solution, not somebody who's trying to figure it out to come tell you what to do? And that's what is killing Africa. They go to China. They go to, come on. China, excuse me. Who's the Chinese man? Give me the best Chinese man. Put us on a table for a debate on Africa, and they will not measure up. Or Indian or Pakistani or Lebanese or even a white man or Englishman. I am that confident. But the point is, I can say all I want to say. If the Africans don't even believe in themselves, it's not going to make any difference.
And I do understand why. You just say it as it is. But if you're going to, you also have to acknowledge at UCPA that if you're going to talk to your fellow brethren, then you've got to package this message in a way that is palatable to them.
No, I don't have to. If your house is on fire, you have a choice. You could sit there and say, oh, Jesus, come and help me, or you come get out and go get water, try to put out, see how much you can put out before the fire people come. Africans are looking for these people to come and appease them. I'm not, like I told you, thank you for saying at the beginning of this show, I don't write love letters. Okay? I say it the way it is. Even in my household, I tell my wife, I say, hey, anytime you're tired of this, let me know, and you can hit the road, and I can hit the road. We have to be practical. We have to be pragmatic. You look at all the races in the world. Africans and the Black people are still the one that everybody, when they see you, they think, oh my God, what am I going to do to help you? And Africans have defaulted into these, looking for sympathy instead of developing strategy. My mom used to say, how many times will something happen to you before you wisen up? How many times? Is there any school we haven't? I went to Harvard. I was in a graduate program over there. I was the first native African to graduate from that program. I know who the people I went to school with. Okay, what's this topic? Put it up. Let's discuss it. But when we, as long as we have doubt about what we know, as long as we have doubt that we cannot provide our own solution, everybody else is going to show up wanting to do it for us, and they're going to do it at their own leisure and at the cost that they know they're going to benefit them. My mom used to tell me again, if I see you beg anybody for what I know you can do, I'm going to cut off your hands. So I got grounded in responsibility.
Chat Night Africa. Keep watching Chat Night Africa.
And now you are watching. My name is Divine Chamakong. I'm anchoring this broadcast from Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. Now we transition to part 2 of this broadcast. At all of us live in the United States. I'm in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. When you go on certain streets, you see the Patel brothers. You see hotels built by Lebanese, by Chinese. You see all this HMAT, QMAT, Great Wall. They are all huge grocery stores constructed by Hispanics also, and Asians. Why are we Africans not doing the same thing? You always say that we are present in the United States, but we do not have a presence. The elections, midterm elections are coming up in the United States. You hear of politicians canvassing for the Hispanic vote, the Black American vote, the Asian vote, but they're not canvassing for the African of descent vote. What's going on?
Because the African in America, again, like you said, is present, is not, is present, has no present. I mean, 90% of Africans are still thinking of going back to their village, or building something in their village. They are caught up on the politics that is going on back home. So they are here, as as some of them have described themselves as economic refugees. So it's about how much money can they grab and how much can they send home. And then, on weekends, what do? They go to their village parties, and in order for them to, impress themselves of what it is they're doing. They are really not engaged in the way other immigrants are engaged in the American political economic system. We have no community bank in America that you could say, African immigrants own, and we have people that say they have PhD in finance and whatever it is that is, they want to impress themselves with. We don't have any zip code. The way America looks at immigrants is zip code and census tract, because in each census tract make up the zip code. So you can go in America and find a census tract that you say, oh, it's dominated by Africans. And when we have little Italy, little Mexico, Chinatown, these people come in here, and they assert themselves, both physically, which is their presence, being present, and then presence, being able to influence things around them. And a lot of these issues, like you were talking about Indians, when I worked for FDIC back in the 80s, late 80s to 1990, when I resigned from FDIC, I was the regional appraisal manager. I saw how these Indians came in and bought all these rundown hotels, because they were the ones that were buying them, and they move in there. The wife, the family, they had a division of labor, and they clean these things up and they run it. Today, like you said, the Patels, whatever other names that come with that, they are the majority owner of these mid-class hotels. What I call mid-class is like anything lower than 3 stars. They are also migrating to the big ones, but they have found a niche for them. You look at the nail salons. So who are running the nail salons? You know how much that nail salon is on the American GDP? About $70 billion just to go get your nail done and your toes done. But where are the Africans? They want to be doctors, they want to be engineers, they want to be all these things that makes them feel good and glorify them. But at the end of the day, they're not coming together to own a company, own a hospital. You have all these African, African doctors. Is there any hospital in America that they own? They are very good in what it is they do, whatever companies they are. They are maybe head of a department or head of surgery or something. But when they can't run a hospital, because that mentality of them is going to come in. The same thing with African Americans. How many hospitals are they running? So there's this. I wrote an article some years ago. Blood does not lie. Because when I came to Dallas, I said I was going to be Christopher Columbus. I'm going to discover this country for me, because I'm the first in my country to come. So I took my time. I went into the Black organizations. Actually, in 1997, I was elected secretary of the oldest African American Chamber of Commerce in the U.S., which is Dallas Black Chamber. So I got involved into it. I was there for a few years to understand that the Black American This, with all due respect, they are not interested in building big business. In fact, most Black people don't even want to work for Black-owned company. That's just as bad and as suspicious it is. So they'll rather go work for companies that are Black owned, so that when they go there and their performance is a challenge, they can say discrimination. We live in a country now where if you are failing school, you blame the school. If you're getting fat because you don't watch what it is you are eating, is the grocery store. So nobody has the discipline, nobody has the order, and we don't pull back and say, okay, let's do this our own. Let's start small. There was a Nigerian grocery store here when they started. In fact, the guy has passed away, and I said, hey, look, let's turn this into a grocery store and start owning, a lot of it across communities where we have our own people. No, he just wanted to have a small store, and he still has a small store 30 years after the fact. Because
But you are not saying that there isn't discrimination in the United States. I mean, racism exists just like tribalism exists.
Discrimination how? America is where you take a zip code and you corner it, you make it your own. If you are invested in your zip code, who's going to come take it? The Hispanic people, the Asian people that are coming into this country. A lot of immigrants that come to America now don't even speak English. So a lot of Africans have the benefit of English. But the ones who don't even know English, when they land here, they recognize the opportunity that they are being exposed to, and they do something, in order to take advantage of it. But for us, we say, like, it's the African that will come here when they are 40 years old and they're going to school to go get a PhD. By the time they're finishing with their PhD, they're in their 50s. When you are in their 50s, how much time is left for you to really be relevant to yourself or anybody else? But these immigrants, when they come, they come in with the trade. They go into what it is they were thinking of doing before they came to America. But the African is the one that says, I got to go get a PhD, because if I don't have a PhD, when I go to my village meeting, they won't put me in the high table. You talked about the high table stuff. It's the Africans, when they do a party, a husband and wife is walking into the party, they want to be announced. Oh, let's welcome engineer, pharmacist, attorney general, blah, blah, blah. And they do all this crappy stuff they do, and then they delay everybody. And the Africans are doing it. Cut it out. Don't invite them.
You talk about parties, and honestly, you get some of the most flamboyant, sumptuous parties organized by Africans. Is it that they don't make use of the connections, that they don't make use of that socializing, or what? What is it?
They socialize, they don't network.
What's the difference?
The difference is that they come in there to come show have you seen the two-story hairstyle they wear? Even when you go to church on Sunday, you don't want to sit behind an African woman, because you wouldn't even see the pastor preaching. Because, they wear these things, it's on Sundays that they want to come out flamboyant, like I say, look for picker. So the parties they go to is also the same thing. How many Africans you see, wear jeans and t-shirt and want to go there? No, they're going to have to put a cap. They have to have a cane, a walking stick. They have to have something in their hand so that they will know people, oh, I'm this, I'm that. America is not that kind of country. America they'll see you, oh, wow, I like what you wear, but they ain't going to go buy it. I wish that when they see all these things we wear, they go into our African stores and buy it, but they're not buying it. They're just shaking their head as like, ooh, these people are still thinking they're in their village. But you see Indians. Indian-born people here have produced 2 governors, born in America. A former governor of South Carolina and a former governor of Louisiana. But Africans born in this country that are the same age, where are they? Are they interacting with the African Americans to boost the political capital? Heck no. Instead, they live in suburbs with their big houses or big whatever it is they're having, and they're happy for whatever it is they're bringing to the table. But that's it. They are trading hours for dollar. They are not involved in the greater American community. They have very limited interaction. They don't even understand the government structure in each of the states where they live.
I told you from the start that when this guy starts speaking, you'll feel jolted, you'll feel rattled. And if you are unhappy with what he's saying, please pick up the phone now. Don't wait and say, oh, Divine, why didn't you ask him this question? That is why we're democratizing our platform. The phone line is open. Take your phone, dial the number 240-603-7367, 240-603-7367, and you will challenge Mr. Et Okpa. I'll still be reading the letter from Father Tatambui from Bamenda, Cameroon. You're watching Voices of Africa on Chat Night. My name is Divine Chamakong. I'm anchoring this broadcast from Washington, D.C. metropolitan area.
We love Chat Night Africa. Keep watching Chat Night Africa.
At UCPA, we see Africans, each African lawyer has their own small law firm. We see Americans organizing huge law firms. We see each African open their small grocery store, their small salon. What would it take for us to be capital wealth builders, to come into conglomerations, clusters, and build wealth and make our presence felt instead of just being present in the United States?
Because we're not a trusting people. We're not very confident that if you and I get into business and you like to wear a nice shirt and you like to wear drive a nice car, I might say, oh my God, why is he doing that? Maybe he's taking money from the business, and then, my wife or girlfriend will say, oh, are you in business with Divine? Look at how good he's doing and you don't do even. Those are the things. Africans are the most suspicious, untrusting people in the world. Look at African Americans. Of all those things they do, how many of them are owning business together? If you go to any Black community and said, okay, I have $5 million to put in your community, I want you guys to match me with $5 million of your own money, they will not show up. Just the same thing with Africans. They will rather have you give us the 5 million or whatever the amount is, and when you give them that money, they now say, hey, I don't trust it's going to go to this man. Let us just divide it up and everybody get their own. You don't build big businesses that way. You have to invest in people. You have to invest in an idea. And then when you recognize that they have a comparative advantage over what it is they're telling you to, and they're going to make your money work, you trust in them. And then you generate paperwork to secure your own position. Africans don't do it. They will rather invest in somebody else's business than invest in the business of their own. And that's the biggest challenge. That's why you would not see Cameroon trading with Nigeria or Nigeria trading with Cameroon and say, hey, you have timber, I'll buy from you. Instead, I want to go buy from Italy, or I'm going to import it from France. Because they say, if I buy from Cameroon or Nigeria or Gambia or Guineans, I'm going to make them wealthy. We rather make somebody wealthy than our own. And that is the biggest challenge. So that's what I'm saying. Forget all this engineering and medicine Africans are running, or law. Africans the laws they do here is transaction law. How many of them have really go and argued the content of a legal provision to challenge certain things? They won't do it. They're just looking for divorce, immigration, accident. What my father called, charge and bail lawyers. We'll be
right back. We'll be right back for your closing remarks. Time for me to read the letter from Reverend Father Tatambui, one of the very educated Reverend Fathers in the northwest region of Cameroon. He writes, the worst form of colonialism, Divine, is mental colonialism, which irretrievably impacted Africans. A good number of us today, notwithstanding our academic titles and achievements, still think of Europe and America as the El Dorado. We are unable to drink from our own wells, that's unquote. There is an urgent need today for the pedagogy of the oppressed to get Africa and Africans off the dependency syndrome, and to let our academics and leaders understand that Africa has enviable untapped resources, human and natural. A giant reduced to a Lilliput, a very wealthy man who inexplicably allows himself to be raped and attacked by skilled bandits who from time to time camouflage as good Samaritans. The tragedy is that we have no eyes to see. And those who want to see soon become disapparidos. It's a tough word there. Ironically caused by some of us. Divine, I easily get emotional when I reflect on the predicament of Africa. That is why I have decided not to engage in sterile arguments with people. I do research on crucial issues every year and publish results and keep for the next generation who I believe will correct our errors. I'm happy to inform you that after years of academic fight with the West, I've been asked by the Vatican to produce a text for the study and teaching of African religion as religion on its own right in all Catholic universities, major seminaries, and houses of formation in sub-Saharan Africa. I've already finished with the English version of 420 pages, which is being translated into French. I'm now working on the myth and reality of witchcraft in an African society. It was Voltaire who ended his philosophical work, Candide, with these words: il faut cultiver notre jardin. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a letter from Reverend Father Tatambui from the Northwest region of Cameroon. You are watching Voices of Africa. In just a moment, we will bring up Ed Okpa, the global affairs analyst and critic, to give us his closing remarks. Time for us to have a musical interlude before I come right back. And that video was shot by Lord Benson in Bamenda, Northwest region of Cameroon. Thank you, Lord Benson. I want to also thank my producer in Lagos, Nigeria, who is producing this broadcast on the different platforms so that the content is taken across the globe to the four corners, the nooks and crannies of planet Earth. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, the global affairs analyst based in Texas, United States, Mr. Ed Okpa, this time around for his closing remarks. Let's welcome Ed.
Well, thank you for having me. For a good hour plus of heart-to-heart conversation. I don't know what it is. I don't hold a magic wand. I can wave and all of a sudden things start to happen. But the people have to be willing to make a change. They have to be willing to transform. For the gentleman whose letter you read, about all that. For me, all of those things. What is the collateral value? Is it because of Christianity that Africans are not doing well, or is it because of Christianity they are doing well? We have all these things, all loaded on us, and we're trying to sort it out. Which one does make sense? You ask yourself, what are the basic stuff any people need? Food, shelter, and clothing. Are Africans able to provide themselves those three things? Can you go to Cameroon today and you said you want to build 5,000 miles of roads and you have Cameroonian engineers do it? Or the president or the minister for transport or whatever works is just going to run to France and cut a deal, and then all of a sudden you see white people in your community pouring concrete? Or are you going to go to China? These are the things that Africans are not doing. You're still looking for people to come build for you what you are capable of doing. Even if you build it the first time and it's rough, you improve on the subsequent one. But you don't fold your hands and wait for this Messiah, Daniel, come to justice to come do it for you. I mean, it's very annoying. I think God has put a wax on his ears. He's not listening to all this screaming of Africa, shouting Jesus and God, because he's not listening anymore. He's giving us the same hands and head he's giving everybody else. Those people are looking for human intervention while we are looking for divine intervention. I don't go to church. I haven't read the Bible since high school, and I have no intention of reading it. But you know what? I know what time it is, and I don't need a clock to tell me. Africans devote a lot of inordinate amount of time pursuing things that at the end of the day doesn't uplift them or lift their condition or standard of living. So I'm just saying,
if you were the president of Nigeria, what would be your first acts in office within the first 90 days or 100 days?
I will fire everybody who is from World Bank that is in Nigeria to advise Nigeria. I'll get rid of them. They will never come back. And I'll call on my cabinet ministers. They will never put a PhD. They'll know an academic title on their card, and they will never dress tribally. They will never have anything to do with tribe. And then none of them will go overseas for medical treatment. None of their family members will go to school abroad. My own kids will go to school in Nigeria as well. So that way, if the schools are falling apart, my kids are falling with it. I'm not aware my kids are over. And then I will not own any house abroad. I will not send any of my money. The salary they pay me will not go over there. And when I retire, I will not go over there. I will not attend UN General Assembly. I will send my ambassador, permanent representative at the UN to represent Nigeria at that time. I will not honor any invitation from any of the so-called world leaders. I will start having conversation with Nigerians, and I will travel to every physical part of the region to speak with the people, and I will tell them, yell at me, cuss me out, tell me what is wrong that I'm doing. And I'm going to assure them that I will respond to them. I'm not going to invite any foreign interest. If you have a PhD in economics, PhD in economics doesn't mean economic development. I don't need those kind of people. And I'm going to challenge Nigerians. We're going to build 5,000 miles of road, and we're not going to borrow money from everybody. And we're going to use Nigerian engineers and the ingenuity to build it. Even if it's collapsing, we take the credit and we take the dishonor, but we're going to get it right. But I'm not going to go recruiting anybody from outside of Nigeria to do it. You have to be confident in your own ability. And once that is taking root, then you can build on it. But this constant chasing, going to China, India, Washington, D.C., I will not do it. If I were to be, but chances are I'm not going to be. But if I were to be, there's no white man who will come into that country and negotiate any deal that will be a disadvantage to Nigeria. Nobody, I don't care who they are. And then every deal that is negotiated will be made public. I will put it in the paper and say, this is what these people are talking about. Do you guys want me to sign on it or not? That's what I would do. I will be transparent. I will be honest. African leaders are not transparent and they are not honest. They rather have a wine with some foreigner and while their own people are sitting on the side clapping for them. No, it's not going to happen. And again, finally, no foreign dignitary come to Nigeria when these Nigerian kids line up on the street to receive them. It will not happen.
Thank you. I knew you were going to end up with that. Thank you, Ed Okpa. We'll have another time to come talk on global matters, especially as related to Africa. That's my passion. I want to thank all those who've contributed, who contribute to making this platform. How beautiful, this dazzling. I appreciate you all a lot. I thank you. I couldn't do this all by myself. I want to thank my producer in Lagos. He's about 6,000-7,000 miles away from here, Mr. Roger Fool. He's the guy who is making sure that this broadcast is aired across the planet on different social media platforms. It's on YouTube, it's on LinkedIn, it's on the internet, it's on many, many places. Thank you again for watching. My name is Divine Chamokong, and that has been Voices of Africa on Chat Night Africa. If you know somebody who's doing something different, impacting a lot of lives, especially in Africa or any part of the world, let us know. We want people who go against the current. All right? You know what I mean? People like Ed Okpa. Again, that's how we round off this week's edition of Voices of Africa. I'll see you sometime soon on this platform for yet another exhilarating edition of Voices of Africa. Bye-bye now. Bye and good night.
I'm coming back. I'm coming back. I'm coming. Coming to get down. I'm coming. I'm coming. Coming to dance. To dance. We're gonna dance. We're gonna dance. We're gonna get down. We're gonna get down. We're gonna party. Party hardy. We're gonna boogie. Boogie woogie. And when we jam, it's out of sight. This song right here, it's dynamite. I'm ready.